My name is not Frank Quintana, but I'm filling in. He is claiming he is sick today, just like Kurt was claiming his car broke down to try to get out of this. But I'm going to go real quick through a couple things here today about something we call our water use program that we have in the state. Essentially, what the water use program is we send out a survey to all public water suppliers and industrial users, and also to a small variety of other water users in the state every year to collect how much water they're diverting and how much water they're actually using or providing to their customers, specifically for public water suppliers. All right? So I just want to go quickly, really quickly through how is this data used and why we collect this data. So we're collecting this data for some of the reasons we already had talked about. Ross talked about public water suppliers. We are trying to regulate and understand how much water each of these public water suppliers are using so that they can submit proof and certification of their water rights. As part of their water rights, we want to know how much is being used so that they can get those certificates done. But we also gather this data to do studies about water resources, to know how much water is being used. In a lot of our areas for irrigation, it's easier to understand. You can, with aerial photography, you can map out fields and see how much water is being applied. But for cities, it's a little more complicated. So in most situations, we require meters for cities, and that data is measured and reported to the state so that we can study the water resources, develop water management plans for areas, evaluate water right applications. But we also provide this data to a variety of people, to the USGS. Oh, that's got a typo in there, USGS does studies about the water resources. The Division of Water Resources, a sister agency to us, they do water resource planning. They have that state financial assistance program, and they want to know through that process how much water is being used so that they can adequately fund and plan. We assess water supply and water use, and it's also hopefully a benefit to the systems themselves as they're looking at how they can become more efficient, right? We're asking very simple questions, I believe simple questions, about how much water you're diverting and how much water you're actually using. So if there's a big discrepancy between those two numbers, you can understand, is my system very efficient? Or are there a lot of losses in my system? Or is there water that I'm not accounting for, right? Or I'm not billing for, which every public water supplier system should keep a very close handle because they don't want to lose revenue for the water that they're supplying to their public. So that's kind of the reasons why we collect this data. So how do we collect this data? So it's an annual survey. This is just a copy of one that goes out every year. And it just asks those simple questions of how much water are you diverting from each of your sources, your wells, if you have a surface diversion, and how much water you're using for each of a variety of categories. But there have been some changes to this form that I want to highlight very quickly. This last year, there's been a lot of scrutiny over this program and a lot more people concerned about this data and collecting this data. So one of the things that was changed is now we require by statute and by administrative rule that a public water supplier actually has to sign the form that they're submitting. And it either has to be a drinking water operator, and they have to provide their operator number, or a professional engineer, and they have to provide their engineering number, attesting to their knowledge that the report is accurate and complete. And lastly, entities that do not report, that have been asked to report this next year, current year that we're in right now, we're doing it right now. We've sent out the report in January. You can fill it out in paper or electronically. But this next year, the current year we're in, we've sent the reports out, we're collecting them, we're working with individuals. But if they do not report, then they will be reported to the Division of Drinking Water, which will assess points against their drinking water system. And I believe it's 50 points that will be assessed. Now, it's very easy to get those points off. All you have to do is report your data. And we were also given some funding this last year from our legislature. We have 2 full-time employees that if you have any questions or any problems, all you have to do is call, and they will come to your system, sit down with you, get online, and fill out the report with you, walk through your system, help you read your meters, do anything that you possibly want to do. So we've tried to get all the blocks out of the way to help you report this data in any way. So the big takeaway from this is we need this data for our regulation and planning purposes. It's an annual program to report this data, and we will help you get this in. If you have any questions whatsoever, you can give us a call, and we will come out to your system and help you get that data reported. And that is all. Are there any questions about the water use data program? Yes?
I've heard or seen that they may help in improving your water metering of that, newer meters or whatever, so that you can account for it better.
So as part of the system, we're going out there to try to help you get your reported. We don't have any funding to help provide to you to improve it, if that's what you're asking.
Yeah, I thought there was a program.
May I?
Yes.
Marie Owens with the Division of Drinking Water. There is the possibility that if you're going to the Division of Drinking Water to get a loan under the SRF, that additional money can be thrown on to upgrade your meters to smart meters. And on the Division of Water Resources website, they're showing that they also have some loan money set aside for additional metering. So it's probably not through water rights.
Yes.
But there is some funding through other agencies that may help. Those are in the form of loans, though, not grants.
Yes, thank you. So there are some loans from Division of Drinking Water, Division of Water Resources, Division of Water Rights, no. We will help you. There is some talk at the legislature to help try to build some funds and everything, but nothing like that has been funded from us. But we will help you go out, and in situations where you might not have meters, we'll help work with estimating that use and do the best we can. But heavily encouraged to get those meters and get those measurements accurate for your system. Any other questions? Yes, over here. Wait 1 second.
So just real quickly, so is this, I mean, the annual diversion report forms have a lot of that information. Is this a separate activity from filing annual diversion reports? I mean, are these selected use reports, I mean, to go to selected water users, or is this part of the annual reporting requirement?
And maybe I'm not familiar with what annual reporting requirement you're referring to,
Well,
but we send this out annually to all public water suppliers and all industrial users. So if it's the same report, this is the same one.
Same thing.
Yeah.
Just wanted to make sure.
Yep, that's that annual report. The Division of Drinking Water, Division of Water Rights, Division of Water Resources, we all want this data, so we all gather together and send one report that we collect and then disseminate to those other agencies. Yes?
Okay, so you just mentioned that you send this out to all industrial users and public water suppliers. So is there any requirement for the industrial users to also have a PE sign or have somebody else that's authorized?
Not right
to do
now,
that?
no.
Okay.
So there's no requirement for industrial users. And it's only industrial users that aren't being provided by a public water supplier system. If they're inside a public water supplier system, they're usually being counted inside that system in most situations. But yeah, they do not have that requirement right now. Okay, with that, we'll turn the time over to Jared. Thank you.